Greetings once again from the future. Yes, this is future me coming back to you and chopping this video up. Yeah, when I recorded this, centuries ago, I had no idea that it would be so long and I would droll on so much about these things. So I figured I would come back from the future to slice this up into two and make them a little more bite-sized, a little bit more enjoyable. I appreciate your gratitude. It's not necessary. This is a selfless act for the good of the people. So we're gonna start right where he left off on, I think, the third. Holy cow! He only got to 2 last video. All right, I'm pretty sure this is just the third. So enjoy it. And now that I remember it, it's actually a pretty darn good video. So I'm gonna watch it along with you. Let's get it going. That brings us to Moa. Now Moa is a jaculi, which is like a springy snake. And they hide up in the trees, all coiled up, tight, taut like a spring, and then they could just fly out and attack from a distance and just fling their whole selves at you and wrap you up and do nasty things. I looked at Moa as more like an intellectual. I'm not really sure why that is, why I would think a snake would be an intellectual. But I wanted to have a sanctuary that had riddles, and so Moa became the Riddler. Shrine on top, stairs that go down, they go inside, and they're confronted with 3 different riddles that they have to solve. And each time they solve a riddle, the door comes closer and closer to the bottom, and so they can get through it. And here are the 3 riddles that I used. You could find anything you want. I just, searched up riddles. You'd be amazed at how many, if you type in D&D riddles, that you'll find a million of them. Some of them not quite as good as others. I just chose these 3. They made sense to me. The riddles are a hard thing for me sometimes to put my head around in a Dungeons and Dragons, because really at that point you are testing the IQ. You're testing the intelligence of your players and not the intelligence of your players' characters. It's kind of an obscure issue with riddles. I think they're still great, and players are players and people are people, and we want to play, and everybody likes getting a riddle right. So I think if you're going to use riddles in your games, they need to be tough, but they can't be so obscure that they're not going to get them, because that's a quick way for you to get players uninterested in your game. If you keep running into these PhD level obscurity riddles, then nobody's going to like that. There's actually several parts of this campaign in particular that I would say go into that, where there's a riddle that only makes sense if you know the answer to the riddle. That probably doesn't make a lot of circular logic, but there's no way to get it. There's no human is going to guess that means that. So we'll talk about that later. I've got some changes for those things when we come up to them, but make sure your riddles are fun. Make sure they're easily figured out. Make them challenging. You don't want to be, super simple about it. Anyway, here's what I chose. Let me just illustrate all that word salad that I just barfed out on you. These are the 3 riddles that I came up with. So the first one is, you saw me where I never was and where I could not be, and yet within that very place my face you often see. Anybody? Bueller? The answer is a reflection. I thought that was a good one. Your mileage may vary. Here's the next one. What does man love more than life? Fear more than death, or mortal strife? What the poor have, the rich lack, and what contented man desire? What the miser spends, and the spendthrift saves, and all men carry to their graves. It even rhymes. Not cool. It's nothing. The answer is nothing. All men carry nothing to their graves. I thought that was kind of cool. Death curse-ish. You get, circle of life going on right there. Number 3. Never resting, never still, moving silently from hill to hill. It does not walk, run, or trot. All is cool where it is not. Sunshine. You got it. Sunshine on my shoulder. Makes me happy. John Denver. So with answering those 3 riddles, the door opens, they enter in, Same thing. One thing to mention is this campaign is fairly deficient in magic items. There are really not very many magic items, and I know that players crave them. I know that I crave them as a player. So these sanctuaries are great little places to throw a simple little, a simple little dagger, or a simple little, there's a thing called the clockwork amulet that's kind of interesting. Little flavorful things. I don't want it to be, you don't want to find a vorpal sword or something in these things, but little fun flavor little things that maybe are good here or there, or fun little, little thing to solve a puzzle. I would sprinkle those into these shrines. Next comes Papazotl. Papazotl is an eblis, or an eblis, or an eblis, or a eblis, however you like to say it. I kind of thought they seemed French, so eblis, maybe? Not French. This one is, there's a shrine up on top, and instead of a stairway behind, it's kind of a V-shaped indentation. So you'd have to come around to this side, and you kind of go down, and it's a big V shape. So we're not talking trench, we're talking kind of a V they go down in. It comes important later. Plus, it just gives it a little bit more spice. Now, the flavor of this one, I said, was this one seemed immaculately groomed, like landscaped. The stone of the shrine was free of any kind of moss or lichen or chip. Like everything was just perfect, and this whole lawn was very, English garden-esque. Like it's a dramatic walkway down into the inside of the sanctuary, as opposed to just a pedestrian walkway that goes down. In the inside, it's the same thing. Very groomed, very beautiful, really stylish. There's a little bit more stylish embellishments on the stone walls. In this one, it's a big circular room. The circular rooms are kind of a theme. Maybe it's me and not the trickster gods. Maybe it's both. But if you're like my party, which was kind of funny, because I think most parties are all up for grave robbing. Do a little bit of grave robbing, right? Because you're going to find some mystical armor that they buried with somebody a long time ago. So I would think that lots of parties are always going into these shrines happily and excitedly. Well, my party, interestingly, had a couple characters that stayed outside. Like they were completely off-put by this idea of raiding these shrines. We had a dwarf cleric that just did not want to do that. Had a couple other players that from time to time just weren't into going down into the death hole in the ground. So that was kind of a fun dynamic. And like I said, these is kind of in order. So you can see that we've done 4 or 5 of them at this point. And there's been a couple of these characters that were always staying outside, never coming in. I wanted to change that for 2 reasons. One, I wanted my player to be able to play. Like, it's no fun when you get to a place and you're role-playing hard enough that my character would not go down there. And then you got to sit and wait and watch everybody else have a fun encounter and not be able to play. So I wanted to fix that. 2, Papazotl is very bossy. Very headstrong, my way or the highway. If you're not with me, you're against me, and if you're against me, I will murder you. So I like this idea of Papazotl forcing everybody down there. So in the circular room, they find there's a locked stone door at one end, and then throughout the room, there are 6 different stones that have 6 different carving likenesses on them. And the characters can instantly recognize what these likenesses are. And what it is a likeness of each one of your party members. So in our party we had a turtle and a dwarf and a gnome and a drow and a tiefling, and then the gnome had a Deinonychus that was kind of their friend. So that we always had a Deinonychus with us, the dinosaur. These 6 stones, 1 stone each, looked exactly like the makeup of the party. And my thought there would be, magically, Papazotl would know who was in the party. So no matter who they brought, there would be that many stones, and one of each stone would look exactly like one of the party. So it was super obvious that everybody had to come into this shrine. They figured that out. Everybody's got to go down there and stand on their stone. And side note, the way that the dwarf was convinced to come down in here, the one that would never go into these shrines, is that he said that he was interested to examine the quality of the stonework is what got him down there. So he went down. They all stand on their respective stones. The door goes down, the other door goes up. So you got to go through it. I had one jokester that wanted to see what happened if he stepped on the wrong one, and I just had a big puff of poison come at him, just to slap him around a little bit, because I got a license to slap. I'm going to use it. So the door opens up. They go through. They come to a big cavern, a big chasm, straight down, bottomless chasm. There's no way they can jump it. There's no way they have a rope long enough. There's no way they can get across it by... I just want to make it a challenge. So there's no visible way to get across it. My thought here on this design is this Papazotl's creature is a bird, right? So a bird would have no problem flying across this expanse. But if he's testing the worthiness of these guys, he wants to see how they would solve this easy task that a bird could easily do. We had a druid in our party, turned into a spider, and ran laps. Took someone, giant spider, obviously, carried him over, came back, carried him over, carried him back. So did a little taxi service, spider taxi service across. Great idea. I didn't care how they did it. Sometimes you give them tasks just for the fun of it to see how they solve it. They get over there, and this place is a little different. They find the same big gold statue, the same boxes, but oddly there are huge nests, like bird nests. Spoiler alert, eblis nests, perhaps. And they've never seen that in any sanctuaries they've been in. There's never been anyone living in these things. So, but there's nobody there now. It's just these nests, and there's a lot of them, and they're big. They start going through the boxes. They find the little statuette, but just as like a red herring, which is fun to do to players, I put one chest. As they opened it, it was full of bird seed, like seeds of all kinds, stuff that the birds would eat. So they were instantly kind of enthralled by that. Like, what do we do with this stuff? So they were taking some out and throwing it at the statue, or they took some out and sprinkled it by the nests or anywhere like that. Nothing happened, except they kept noticing that this chest never seemed to empty. Like, no matter how much of this stuff they took out and threw around and did whatever, it just kept filling up and filling up and filling up. Even if they picked it up. So one of the characters was just so entranced by it and so excited about it that he picked it up and dumped it, and it just dumped out like an eternal avalanche of these seeds, and then he flipped it back over and put it down, filled right back up. So nothing really happened with that. Like, it didn't open up any secret doors. It didn't give him any kind of reward. I just wanted to see what they do with it. And if my thought of the actual creatures living in this shrine, that was what I kind of made it as, is that's how they lived. They ate out of this, it was an offering from Papazotl to his followers, that they had this endless chest full of stuff. So really it's just a goofy little thing, and it didn't take them long to realize nothing was going to happen with it, but fantasy. This is a fantasy world where magic is real, so anything you can imagine you can throw into it. And so my imagination said, never-ending birdseed box. Maybe I need more imagination. They walk out, they got their prize, everything's good, they think they're totally fine. They come out of the door, it closes behind them, and they're on that V-shaped kind of walkway that goes up to the top, and it is completely lined with giant angry stork birds, giant eblis. And for a moment, they have a little negotiation where they're trying to, talk their way out of things. Nobody wants to talk their way out of things. And the eblis notice that they've got a little golden statuette. They realize they've been in there and have desecrated, and an attack ensues. So this was the biggest combat that happened in the sanctuaries, and they have to fight off these eblis. They can fly around, they can do attacks and fly off. They run really fast. There's a lot of cool stuff with these birds that really I never would have thought to use. I mean, it's kind of funny that the thing that makes them a monster is just that they're big. I guess they talk. They don't look any different than, you know, a crane or a really elongated stork. But the combat was fun. They had to get through it, and they survived. Unkh is next, and if you want to know, and it will be important later on, Unkh is right in the middle of the 9 alignments. Unkh is neutral. And that comes important later because we find out as we go that different trickster gods hate each other. Like they can't stand each other. But Unkh, right there in the middle, is always neutral and it can always mediate. That's important later. That's for another show. We'll get there. I set this sanctuary on the plateau of Mbala, which is a really cool place that I'll do a video about later. That's another video. But my idea there was that other creatures had found the shrine and they were trying to take it over, right? Unkh was so neutral that even though he built this sanctuary for the players to find, that other people moved in and he was like, what can I say, right? Don't be like that. Have an opinion. Neutral's dumb. Anyway, the creatures that found this place were lizard folk, which are really great enemies to play with. And I found so many variations. So you got the normal, you know, there's a shaman type. The one that was really cool is called is the sub chief, and it has this great action. It's called the Jaws of Samuyuanya. I think that's pretty, you know, don't get any on ya. Samuyuanya, don't get any on ya. So it's like a big spectral jaw that just comes out and clamps down. And it was really fun. Plus there's some magic going on. My brain tends to go to magic or to combat a lot. Most of the monsters that exist in Chult are the bitey, scratchy kind. They're not really the come at you with magic kind. So I liked looking for moments and times when my players could fight against magic because they just didn't do it very often. And you can get really good at defeating armor class and doing lots of damage, but sometimes that's at the cost of your savings throws, and magic can mess you up. So I was out to mess them up. I think I did a good job. So there were a bunch of them. They got to the sanctuary. They realize it's infested with lizard folk, and a battle ensues. And typical Hollywood battle, right? The first people are just the pawns, just the foot soldiers come out, and then wave 2 is, you know, the sub chief and a shaman or something like that. Phase 3 was they have an Allosaurus, and so it comes running out, big old Allosaurus, and attacks the party. So they're doing all kinds of different things. They're having to deal with different waves of bad guys. It was quite a fight. And in my party, at least, they actually lost a companion that they'd had the whole game. And it was, I mentioned before, the druid had made friends with this Deinonychus dinosaur. He actually rode it around. And its name was Jungle Princess. So JP for short to her friends. But she actually died in this attack. And I didn't really mean for that to happen, but it happened. And it really took the air out of their sails. Like, they really took it hard. Because this creature had fought alongside them for, 20-something sessions. They've had it for a long, long time. And, we buried it. And interestingly enough, later in this campaign, that one of the player characters died. And I don't think they took that as hard as they took this Jungle Princess dying. Side note, it was just funny. Players are awesome. Humans are amazing, and you never know what's going to happen. Anyway, so they fight off the lizard folks, and then they go inside the sanctuary. It looks very similar to everything else. All the traps were sprung. Obviously, the lizard folk had come and taken this place over. They disarmed all the traps, and they actually found a couple flail snails. Unkh is a flail snail, which are really scary in their own right. So they found a couple shattered shells. These lizard folk must have come in and taken care of whatever lived there. They get their loot. They're on their way. All right, so now we're coming to two trickster gods whose names I mess up every time, and I'm gonna not blame myself. I'm gonna blame. There's 3 or 4 different YouTubers that did videos like this that I listened to 100 times that mispronounced these trickster god names, and that's what I went with. And since then, I've looked at them written down and realized that that's not how it is. So this first one is called Ejin, which is the almiraj. I always called it Injin. Again, not my fault, YouTubers. You're awesome. I blame you all. So it's very likely in these videos I'm going to say Injin. I know that it's wrong. I know that y'all will forget that I've admitted it and be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't. But I also admit that I'm going to be mispronouncing a trickster god, which, in the greater context of mistakes that could be made by a human person in his life, it's pretty high. I apologize. I'm going to apologize right up the front. Injin, I'm going to say it, you can't stop me, is the almiraj. This is the one that they just fell into it. So they're just walking along. There's no stone monument. There's no path. There's no pillars. They're just walking and boom, they all fall into this thing. And they just got to start going. That was another way for me to make sure that dwarf would participate in the festivities. This one was very simple. The 2 very simple traps, and again, they get cocky like we can find traps, don't worry about it. Another big circular room, the door at the end of it, and looking around, they can't see anything anywhere. There's no furniture, there's no rubble, there's no sign of anything else. And then the hair on the back of their neck starts to stand up and they realize they're not alone. They look up and there's 3 of these oozes that just drop to the ground, slimes, and they start attacking. And I will say this with complete certainty that up to this point in my campaign, my players had never really gotten mad at me. These made them mad. These are what they're called non-Newtonian oozes or slimes. Which means, if you go back to your high school physics, non-Newtonian basically means the harder you hit it, the harder it gets. So, it's a big jelly. You whack it super hard, it does not give. Like if you tap it, like a big jello mode, right? But if you hit it as hard as these guys do, and I purposely put it towards the end of all these sanctuaries so that my players were big and buff, hit really hard, had a super hard attack, roll, and damage. And so they're just going. They're just going like crazy. So I'll put the stat block up of the one that I used. But the kind of the mechanic was the hit. The higher your 2 hit, the harder and more immune to damage these things were. So the drow, we had a drow who was a ranger. So he's doing these, plus 10, plus 20, 12, these crazy, crazy attack rolls and hitting 20 something to hit, and his arrow would just bounce off of it. And they'd shoot fire at it, or they'd shoot some kind of magic at it, and super high to hit number, and it would just fizzle, fly off. And then they'd start getting confused because they'd shoot the same kind of thing at it, or they'd shoot, let's just say they shot fire. I think they shot fire once, and rolled pretty low, like just barely past the AR of the non-hardened gel, and it hit and did damage. And so all right, everybody, we got to do fire damage. And they start pelting with fire damage, and not all of it hit because some of them rolled too high, and it would hit and just dissipate. And they just were trying to figure that out. They'd come down and they'd hit it hard, and really what it comes down to is how long it takes for your players to roll a bad roll. So it's just such a delicious little circumstance where they've spent the whole game building up this to hit number, and now it's a complete detriment. And these things hit hard. Like it's a huge amount of acid damage that comes after you. If you hit them with a certain type of damage, they split, and that happened a couple times, and they have 2 or 3 of them coming when there used to be just 3. There's 4 or 5. So this was just a nutty encounter, and it was so much fun for me because I gave them no hint. Like if they hit it, I would just say it appears to shrug off your hit. I gave them no hint of non-Newtonianness at all, and they were pretty pissed by the end of the encounter. Once they figured it out, it was great. So then they start trying to figure out how do they get less, because you can't roll less than your hit. Like if you got +8 to hit, you're gonna get +8, unless you start getting creative, like closing your eyes, they said, or wielding a weapon they weren't proficient in, or they're just figuring out all the ways, re-engineering the rules to find what lowers my to hit, and it was glorious. They got it done. They found their little statuette and they were out, and they cursed my name. To this day, if anything comes up about a slime or a jelly, I get looked at and I can tell they're still angry about it. All right, here comes the next trickster god whose name I will always mispronounce. So I believe it is Kubazan. I will always say Kuzaban. So this is the froghemoth. Everybody loves froghemoth. I've talked about it in a video over here, or maybe over here. So it was actually one of my top 5 monsters in this campaign. So go to that video over there, that video right there, and you can see where it ranked in my top 5. Let's go to so to set this up, they were traveling on the ocean trying to get back. They were in a ship, and one of the lookouts called something in the water, and they look over, and it's the stylized stone shrine, like the obelisk that's above the shrine, but it is full on just floating in the water. They're far from shore, they're far from a reef, they're far from any kind of outcropping. It's just magically floating there, which I just loved. I just was so happy with that. And so they get a little boat and they float out to it and they all jump in. And this one will necessitate the magic whiteboard, so let's go there now. All right, so the characters enter kind of this dank underground cavern, kind of roughly rounded walls, but very deep, and it's very moist and humid down here, seeing as how this whole apparatus is under the ocean. But so what they see when they walk in is right in the middle, there's kind of like a seesaw kind of device, like this. All right, a level. All right, so here, this part of the room and this part of the room, this is their view, kind of looking straight into it. This is all freaking hot lava. On one end is riches. So like, I'm just gonna draw like a treasure chest. All right. So on this side, they have a treasure chest. That's obviously a treasure chest. It's got riches pouring down off of it and things like that. On this side is a Chultan woman. She's got pretty hair. See, look how pretty that is. And she's trapped here. So I guess her arms would be more like this. She's trapped. Okay, can't move from there. All right, and then in the back, we have a froghemoth. Let's see if I can draw a froghemoth really quick. So as they walk in, they take in the scene. Your characters are right here, and just this bellowing voice says, you are in the presence of Kuzaban, the most powerful, the most intelligent, the most awesome of all the trickster gods. Kneel before my greatness. In order for you to prove yourself worthy of my presence, you must pass this test. And this is the test that they see. All right. So it's obvious that if one of these things comes off, the other's going to fall into the hot lava. So it's basically a choice. Are you going to save the woman, or are you going to save the gold? All right. So let me fill you in on a little secret. All right. Kuzaban is kind of a jerk. All right. He doesn't give a crap. He don't play, and he does whatever he wants. So I love this because players are always, they always kind of think that people are going to play by the rules, right? If they're confronted with a problem like this, then obviously there's a correct solution. And Kubazan does not work like that. He is not of his word. He is a jerk, and he kind of pleasures in the sadness and pain of others. So if you run up and you save the woman, you jump down, take her down here. This thing flops up, all the gold falls into the lava and is destroyed. And in their ears, you hear, "What a foolish move that you would sacrifice immense riches for some person you don't even know. You know, you are not worthy of Kubazan." And then the froghemoth attacks, right? Comes down and they have a big froghemoth fight. All right, let's say that you instead decide to save the treasure. All right, so you jump up here, you save the treasure. She falls in and dies a horrible, horrible death, screaming and yelling and agonizing. And you're standing here with all this loot. Well, then Kubazan says, "How dare you steal my gold? You will pay the consequences." Froghemoth attacks. So no matter what you do, Kubazan don't care. He just wants to kill things. He just wants to put you through agony, and he's going to do it. So when that choice is made, so when in actual practice, this is how in actual practice, your folks come in, let's say they choose her, they save her, hopefully, they kill the froghemoth that comes after them. Then they're teleported exactly back to this spot, and the voice of Kubazan comes into their minds again and says the same thing. There's no like, "Hey, you got it wrong, try it again." He just says the exact same thing. You are in the presence of Kubazan, the mightiest, strongest, smartest of the trickster gods. Make your choice, be worthy. And then, obviously, if they choose the other one, it's going to happen. So, really, they have to fight this froghemoth twice to get through this, because there's no right answer. And I think my party figured that out, that there's Kubazan, there's no getting around it. He's just a jerk. So they had to do it twice. Not bad. Oh, Kubazan. Kubazan. The more I say it, the more you'll say it, and then I'll be less wrong. Kubazan. This brings us to the very last of the trickster gods, Shagambi. Now, I put this one right before they get to Omu. I wanted to have the final one right before, so they kind of had it fresh on their minds about these trickster gods. Shagambi is the kamadan. Kamadan, another one that you can just, kamadan is how I would probably say it. It's a jaguar with all these snakes on its back, terrifying. Again, actually no, I did have a couple encounters with the kamadan, so they're fun to run. This one was fun because eventually they found the guide that could get them to Omu, and so we have this professional guide who knows every inch of Chult, and they're walking down the trail, and all of a sudden she sees this sanctuary off the side that she's never seen before, and so she's freaked out about, "What are you talking about? How, that's never been here before," and she's kind of taken aback. They go down into the stairs, and what do they find? Can you guess? Circular room. I think it's more me than the trickster gods. I think I can just think of circular rooms. So this one's another whiteboard, so let's go there now. All right, let's talk circular rooms. They enter, giant circular room, lots of circular rooms in this design. So here's kind of the entrance, here's kind of the exit. They come in right here. All right, so in the middle, there's kind of a little, I don't know, it's kind of like a pedestal, and it has a little rack on it. And on that rack is held a bag. All right, so that's kind of a little bag hanging on a rack. So tantalizingly hanging on the rack, by the way, might I add. So once that's taken, if that's taken, I mean, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're not going to take it. Your players are going to take it. And once that happens, then random stone kind of pillars come up out of the floor all around in random patterns, right? And then the room starts to spin. All right, so this whole thing is spinning around. So you got spinning around and you've got randomly spaced spikes. So you can see how difficult it would be to run across this and not have it just bash into you as you go and to get to the other side. So that's where the dexterity saves start coming in. I had them do a dex save just even to progress. And if they didn't progress, and this I treated this as difficult terrain. So it's slow going because they're spinning trying to walk across this thing. And so they have, first of all, they need to save a dexterity save just to make progress. And if they fail it, then they took some damage, not very much damage. But if they failed it by 5 or more, then I said that one of these spikes came around and just slammed into them, doing extra damage. I think I did. I mean, I didn't do a ton of it. It was like maybe a couple d6 for the first fail, and then if you fail further than 5 points, then it was another 2d6. So, I mean, it's nothing to be laughed about. It's not a huge room, so most of our players got across it in 2 or 3 tries, but it's just a fun thing to put them through that they weren't expecting. Once they get through the circular room, they go down another path, the door opens up, go down the path, and they come into what looks like a music hall. Like there's a stage, and it's kind of built sort of like a band shell, I guess, so that the sound kind of comes out, and you hear this, and they hear this haunting music, like happy, some of the most soothing music they've ever heard. It's a harp and a female voice, and as they come around the corner, there is a stage. There's a beautiful, beautiful elven woman playing the harp and singing. In front of her, there are 5 audience members who are just in rapt attention. They don't turn around. They don't, even if the players were to make some kind of noise, they're not turning around. They are transfixed and enjoying the show. So the music starts having like a harpy song effect where it's starting to seep into their minds and control them. So I had them do the same saving throw as for a harpy, and if they failed, then they went up and crowded the stage, right? Went up and got into the audience with the other folks. And as that happened, as they got closer, the beautiful elven woman is a banshee, and her true ghastly, ghostly form comes out, and you just know how deadly those things are. The shriek, the scream that they let out can zero people. Like if you don't save that, you get zeroed out. And if that wasn't bad enough, the audience members were just kind of propped up skeletons with it's a creature called a boneless. I believe it's from Ravenloft. I think it's a Curse of Strahd thing, but it's really just so if a skeleton, animated skeleton is a monster, the flesh that used to be on that skeleton is its own organism, and it attacks, and it's terrifying because it'll come at you and it kind of crawls up and grapples you, and then it tries to just envelop you. So you start getting into the suffocation rules and things like that. Not good at all. So then the big fight ensues, obviously, and once they get done, they get the things that they want to get, and there we go. By the way, the bag that they find in the other room, in the circular rotating room, is a bag of holding, which is always every adventurer's dream, to be able to put all this stuff in it. But I had it also include a bagman monster, which is super scary, and from time to time it just comes out. It's a creature that lives in that kind of interdimensional space, interplanar space, but that creates a bag of holding. And so there's a creature that lives in there, and so it constantly would come out, and the guy wearing it 2 or 3 times got attacked by it, and I had to cram it back in there. And they kept the bag, like they never got rid of it, which I think I probably would have gotten rid of it, but that was just yet another cool monster I found and figured out how to lace into this campaign. Well, thus concludes our tour of the sanctuaries of the 9 trickster gods. I hope you like them. I hope there's some ideas in there that will work for you that you can use in something else. I really hope that you work these trickster gods into your campaign earlier. Don't let them just be, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5. Weave them in a little bit. Give them some foreshadowing. I promise you that the shrines and the tombs within the Tomb of the Nine Gods will mean more because your players already have kind of a relationship with these gods and understand them instead of having to learn about them right off the bat when they get there. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the likes, the subscribes, comments. I love comments that, those of you who've made comments, I try to reply right away, and I really appreciate that interaction. And I have a Patreon, and I actually have patrons. So thank you so much. I never thought that I would do that would happen. So I so appreciate it. And for you, I will keep making these videos. It's for you, and I appreciate it. Everybody else can watch it too, I guess, but really it's meant for you folks on the Patreon. The link's down here too, if you feel like it. It's a free country. It's all you. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon. Rock on.